I'm Dave Hardy, and welcome again to Say What. One of my goals when I was honored by Governor Justice a year ago to be appointed as a circuit judge was to educate the public more on the judicial branch of government. And one of the heroes in our judicial branch, in all 55 of our counties, is our circuit clerk. And my guest today is one of the longest serving public servants in the state, Kanawha County Circuit Clerk, the Honorable Kathy Gadsden. Kathy, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for those kind words.
Well, you know, I didn't want to lay the longevity thing out there at the beginning, but I decided to do it anyway.
Well, I appreciate you couching it so nicely.
Well, my recollection is you were elected in 1986. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Now, you know, recently I went to a retirement ceremony in your office, and we started talking about how much technology has changed during your time at Circuit Clerk. And I want to put you in the way back Casey Kasem time machine here. What was it like when you first became the Circuit Clerk in 1986? And I might add, Kanawha County is a very, very busy circuit. So what was it like back then?
Well, I actually took office in January of 1987. So it was at that time, it was a purely manual system, but computerization was on the horizon. So the first few months and probably the first year in office, we spent transitioning from a manual system to the first automated case docketing system.
So that was in 1987?
Yes, wow. So we had quite a challenging year, but I had some great assistance, and we had a lot of help from the Supreme Court. And that was when the court first became computerized.
And has the caseload grown from 1987? Is it much larger today than it was then?
Much larger than it was at that time, just with the just mass litigation and other case types like that we didn't have back in the 1987s. As you know, there has been a proliferation of juvenile abuse and neglect cases, adult financial exploitation, things like that just didn't exist, at least from a case category perspective at that time.
Now, what led a brash young Elk River girl to run for circuit clerk back in 1986? Because you were very young when you entered public service.
Yes. Well, a couple of things. One is that I had actually worked in the circuit clerk's office while I was attending college. I had worked there during the summer. I actually checked microfilm. My mother was serving as a Kanawha County magistrate, a position that she held from 1977 until 1995 when she became the Kanawha County assessor. And also when I was in college, I had worked at Legal Aid Society, North Central Legal Aid Society, and that kind of all those things together came together to create my interest in the court system and in the clerk's office.
You know, we could do a whole segment about the difference in running for office in 2024 versus running in 1986. It seems almost quaint today to think about how candidates ran for office back then. Probably a lot of door-to-door.
Did door-to-door, did the yard signs, did the candidate forums, but now, as we know, it's much more social media driven and just media driven in general, but there was a lot of direct contact with voters, and I think a little bit of that has come back, the door-to-door, but it's mostly direct mail and social media.
Now, that computer system that was installed in '87, what type of computer system was that?
It was an old AS400, and it was a great case docketing system. As you may remember, before we transitioned to electronic filing, it was called CCMS, and it was just an older system, but it served the court system well for many decades.
How many years did that system stay in place?
Until we transitioned to electronic filing this year.
That's amazing. So it was basically it was the same mainframe all that time?
It was upgraded periodically, but it was essentially, yes, that old system.
Now, back in 1987, of course, I don't think we had the family law courts at all, did we?
There were family law masters, and then there was a constitutional amendment in 2004, I believe, that created the family court judges and the family court system as we know it today.
So today we have how many family court judges?
We have 5 family court judges.
So you have, your office does all the filings for that particular group of judges?
Yes, we are the record keeper for the family court as we are for circuit court. As you know, we have courtroom clerks that are assigned to our circuit judges, and while we do not have courtroom clerks assigned to family court judges, we do have assigned staff that work specifically with domestic relations cases and work with the 5 family court judges on a daily basis.
So you have people in your office that actually go out to the judges' courtrooms and are assigned to that judge?
Yes, in circuit court, yes, we do. Every circuit judge has an assigned courtroom clerk that attends court with the judge every day and assists the judge in whatever kind of documents need to be processed. They also assist the court in the seating of a jury. They administer oaths to witnesses and perform other tasks as the judge directs in the courtroom.
How many judges were there back in 1987?
There were 7. I believe that the Judicial Reorganization Amendment of 1976 created the 7 circuit judges, which have stayed in place all these years.
Until January 1 of 25.
Yes.
And Kanawha County will then have an 8th circuit judge.
Yes, it will be transformative just from that perspective that we've gone from 7 circuit judges to 8 judges. As you know, we will also go from 10 magistrates to 13 magistrates, and that's all based on the judicial realignment and the legislature's directives.
Tell me about the magistrate court, because I call it the people's court because it truly is the people's court. And if you go down there, you get the feeling very quickly that it's a court open to any citizen. But tell me about the caseload and the flow of the magistrate court system. And we have 13 now starting January 1st, 25. So tell me about that.
Well, as you know, everything that is initiated in magistrate court, well, not everything, but criminal matters that are waived to circuit court, those are initiated in magistrate court. So we expect and anticipate an increase or an increased rate in those cases that are waived or bound over to circuit court once the 13 magistrates take office. And with respect to the magistrates, as I mentioned earlier, my mother served as one of the first magistrates in Kanawha County pursuant to the Judicial Reorganization Amendment back in the 70s. And they are the old saying, where the rubber meets the road. They really do see people that come right in from our streets and our community for assistance, from everything from wrongful occupations to altercations or disagreements with neighbors, just all kinds of real life, everyday matters that citizens need assistance with from the court system.
The magistrate courts, do they ever close?
No, there is a magistrate on duty 24 hours a day. They are either in person in the day court, night court area, or they are on call.
So if you get arrested at 3 o'clock in the morning on a Wednesday night, the magistrate is going to be there to book you in.
I'm not certain if after a certain hour. I know the magistrate on duty is there until midnight, I believe, on nights and weekends. And then if it occurs after that hour, I believe that they are video arraigned the next morning, unless it's a juvenile. And of course, then the magistrate would be called out.
So you've got 13 magistrates, 5 family court judges, and 8 circuit court judges,
Right.
all that flows through your office.
Now, there is a magistrate clerk office for the magistrates.
Okay. Does that office report to you, or is it independent?
It reports to the chief circuit judge and the West Virginia Supreme Court.
Okay. So the magistrates have their own clerk.
Yes.
Well, I've learned something for the day. Now, I recently received, as a circuit judge, I recently received a caseload report from you. And I will tell the public that my caseload on that report was 703 cases. And I saw the other judges as well. Is that typical caseload for a circuit court judge?
Yes, I believe I know the document that you're referring to, and I think the average number of active cases among our existing judges, the 7 circuit judges, was 630. So, yes, that's about average. Last year, at the end of the year, there were 7,950 cases filed in Kanawha County Circuit Court and Family Court. This year, we're right at 7,500, and we've still got another week and a half to go. So it looks like we will be close to last year's total caseload number, but maybe just a little short.
So doing the quick math in my head, that's over 600 cases a month on average
That's
are
right.
filed in Kanawha County.
That's
No
right.
wonder our building is so busy.
It is very busy.
I think of the Kanawha County Courthouse as like a beehive. When you drive by there are always people going in and out. It seems like all hours. But now, one thing that has changed is the technology. And of course, technology is changing the workplace everywhere. But when I think of the courts, of course, you think of the computerization. We think of the video setups in the courtrooms now. So tell me about how that came to be.
The remote hearings, yes, are now considered almost an essential component of court operations, and they, I believe, were initially used during COVID to accommodate the court hearings. I think magistrates, again, as I mentioned, they have had video arraignments from the jail for some time, but the remote hearings, the Teams hearings, and things like that, I think were a result of COVID and a way to continue the court processes during that time.
How hard was that transition for the courthouse? Was that difficult, or was it seamless, or something in between?
It was impactful because you may remember that the Kanawha County Judicial Building was one of the first public buildings to be closed because of a COVID outbreak at the time.
You know, I'd forgotten that. There was a COVID outbreak very early on at the Kanawha County Courthouse.
Yes. And as a result, the building was shut down until, at that time, all of the safety precautions could be put in place, which was, I think it was in May before it shut down in March, the end of March about, and didn't really reopen to the public until sometime in May. But the circuit clerk's office quickly, the very next day, we transitioned over to the county commission courtroom, where we continued to file all the emergency documents and matters pursuant to the Supreme Court's, there was an emergency order that was in place, and we continued to take bonds in criminal matters. We took applications for mental hygiene proceedings, petitions in juvenile abuse and neglect matters, and all of those other matters that were of an emergency nature. We also answered numerous calls from the public, attorneys, and others during that time. It's hard to believe that it's been 4 years ago, 4.5 years ago, and we had a very strong chief judge at that time, Judge King, the late Honorable Charlie King. He was the chief judge that year, and the county commissioners, the county manager, they all worked to continue services to the public during that time.
Did the filing of lawsuits drop dramatically during the pandemic?
It did, and that was a national trend. And so it took a couple of years for for that trend to uptick again, and we are now, we have recovered from that just as most of the nation has.
Now, one thing that's been so big, and it started statewide, and I think was Kanawha County the last county of our 55 to implement electronic filing? Or
We were
next to
actually, we were the next to the last.
Okay, who was last?
Monongalia.
Okay, tell me how long it took. Of course, the Supreme Court leads on these things, is that right?
That's right. The electronic filing is an initiative of the West Virginia Supreme Court of Appeals. And as you know, in the Circuit Clerk's office, in conjunction with the Supreme Court, implemented electronic filing in all circuit court and family court matters on April 1st of this year. And electronic filing, as you know, is just the submission of court documents by attorneys and their staffs and government agencies and other government users. And so the e-filing initiative was intended or is intended to bring uniformity to the case management systems utilized by the various courts throughout the state, and to increase accessibility to case information, and to streamline efficiency, and all in furtherance of greater court efficiency.
How long did it take to do it statewide? I know Kanawha County came in 2024.
I think it was roughly 9 years.
Wow, long time.
I think that the first pilot counties were in place maybe in 2013 and early 2014.
I'm sure the pandemic probably slowed it down as well.
That is my understanding, that yes, there was some rescheduling of various counties because of the pandemic. And there were a lot of revisions and modifications made to the case docketing software along the way, so that by the time it got to Kanawha County, some of those things had been perfected, and we benefited from that.
Did you have any glitches when you first came online, which would have been April 1st, 2024?
We did not, and I attribute that to the exceptional talent of the West Virginia Supreme Court of Appeals and their Court Plus team and their IT installation technicians. There were certainly things that were brought to my attention that could have happened, and so we were apprised of those things that could have happened, but it was very smooth. I'm not going to say there weren't things that we didn't find out in the days after the initial implementation, that we had to go back and fill in data and things like that. But the conversion of data, it was a tremendous amount of data that was converted, because they essentially captured all of our computer information from the 1980s, when we started to systematically input computer information about court cases. So it was, like I said, it was exceptional.
Was there any, so you're saying it went without a glitch. You're being very modest. So Kanawha County was last for a reason, or next to last for a reason, because they wanted to debug it and make sure it was okay before. I assume we're the largest circuit, is that right?
Yes, we are the largest circuit in the state.
You know, as you look, let me ask you this. Is it still possible to old school file a legal paper in Kanawha County now, or is everything done electronically?
It is mandatory. Electronic filing is mandatory for attorneys, and we still have pro se litigants, or litigants that come into the court system without the benefit of an attorney. And so the circuit clerk's office files their documents on their behalf.
Did you get much pushback from the attorney community?
No, not at all. We did a lot of outreach. The West Virginia State Bar was absolutely wonderful. They assisted us every time that we reached out to them to do bar blasts or other types of communication. the Supreme Court and the Court Plus team held, they weren't really training sessions, but they were informational sessions for the state bar, so people could attend online, and those all of those meetings were noticed. And so I think that with where we fell in the timeline of the implementation, most local attorneys who had practices outside of Kanawha County were already using Court Plus or West Virginia e-file.
And then, of course, I think the federal courts went to electronic filing quite some time ago.
I think it was in 2005 that
Wow.
that PACER was implemented in U.S. District Court. Yes.
Boy, it doesn't seem that long ago. They were talking 20 years. In my mind, it was
Right.
like 10 years ago.
Right.
When you look at, again, the way it was, say, in the 1990s versus today, I'm going to try out a couple of my impressions on you, and you tell me if I'm right or wrong. I get the impression, generally, there are less cases tried today than there was, say, 25 years ago. And I attribute that to, in many cases, the emphasis on mediation. There's such an emphasis on mediation now. Am I right or wrong on that?
I don't have the exact numbers, but I would say in years past there probably were more trials. This year, to date, we have had 17 jury trials. I believe there were 9 civil and 8 criminal. And that is comparable to the number that we had last year. It's in that same range. But in years past, I can remember that there were many more jury trials. So I think that that's accurate, what you've said, because of the mediation and other emphasis on settling cases prior to going to trial.
Yeah, I know in my legal career, which has now spanned 40 years, hard to believe, there's so much more emphasis on mediation now than there used to be. Mm-hmm. And secondly, and this is one that I think that's well known, is the uptick in general abuse and child abuse and neglect cases. And all the circuit judges, of course, see that in their caseload. When did that happen, or when did that start?
I think it coincided with the increase in the abuse of opioids. At least that's my understanding of the increase in the number of juvenile abuse and neglect cases. Currently, I believe there are about 460 pending in our circuit, new cases, and that is about on par with what we had last year. So that is we'd like to see that case category be reduced, and hopefully the opioid litigation and the settlement that arose from that will bring educational efforts and other resources to address that problem.
Is that 400, what's the number, 450?
Approximately.
Okay, is that per year, or is that just
That's per year.
Per year, so
Mm-hmm. So right now, yeah, it's pending in the circuit.
That's nearly 40 a month, or thereabouts, between 35 and 40 a month. Was it that way even 10 years ago?
I don't believe so. I don't have those numbers right at the top of my head, but I don't believe so. Like I said, it could have been right around that time, because that would have coincided right about with the time of the proliferation of opioids.
You know, Kathy, I've often thought, and I've read articles, in many ways, a court docket reflects society. And
Yes.
you see society reflected in our docket in many ways, because time after time you see drugs. Seems like it used to be more alcohol. Now drugs seems to dominate the agenda on the criminal side, and of course on the abuse and neglect side. Can you see any trends there at all, or is that just my general impression?
No, I think that's right on trend, and we do have several courts within our circuit that deal specifically with drug abuse. Judge Bailey is the long-serving judge in charge of the adult drug court, and I believe Judge Salango has juvenile drug court, and there is a family drug court as well. So the court has, through these specialty courts, been able to shepherd certain cases and individuals into those programs so that they can get additional treatment.
One thing I should ask, because people are always asking me these questions, how many people work in your office?
Currently, we have about 32 or 33. We've got an intern in for the Christmas holidays.
Wonderful.
College
Brings back
student.
memories from you being a college student, right?
That's right. So we're a little understaffed right now. We're
You segued me perfectly on that.
okay.
Or if someone wanted to apply for a job at the Kanawha County Circuit Clerk's office, how would they do that?
Well, we do have a link on the Kanawha County website, and just under the Circuit Clerk's office, or they could call our office anytime, drop off a resume, email it to us, or anything like that.
Are you looking for new employees right now?
We are yes, always. As I would think, a lot of larger employers are always kind of looking for new talent. We do have some challenges coming with the new year. We'll have a new circuit judge. We're always looking for people to cross-train and train in our public-facing positions. That includes working in the courtrooms with assigned judges, or just dealing with litigants at our public counters. Assisting litigants on the telephone and so forth. So yes, we are always interested in persons who have advanced clerical skills. If they have paralegal backgrounds, that's where a lot of our employees, that's the background from which a lot of them have, and criminal justice backgrounds, criminal justice degrees, things like that.
As you look ahead, and we're almost time to wrap up here, but as you look ahead to the upcoming year, what's your biggest challenge?
I believe that our biggest challenge is in staying focused and remaining committed to providing all the services that our office functions to serve, and the addition of the new judge, the addition of the new magistrates. We have the Kanawha County Building Renovation Project that will be coming up. That will impact us in our work with the jurors that may be coming into the building for jury duty. And so we are always looking at the workload. We're always looking at the work schedule and trying to anticipate and plan ahead. And so we'll continue to do that in 2025.
Well, thank you so much for your service all these years, and I expect you to be there for many, many more. So thank you for being here today.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for your shared friendship through the years.
Keeping you informed on the Library Network about the state of our circuit courts in West Virginia, I'm Dave Hardy. Thanks for watching. Say What?